Hello and welcome to Reading Comprehension Strategies, a PowerPoint video created by myself, Janie Cox, for YouTube for Educators at Boise State University. Reading is thinking. Once you have learned to read, it is now time to read to learn. In order to do so, it is important that you are consistent in checking for understanding. Today we will discuss 5 strategies for checking for understanding. The strategies that we will use to check for understanding include making inferences, making connections, questioning our reading and what we have read, making predictions, and visualizing, all as we read. These are all great strategies to check for understanding, and the symbols right here, located with the circles around them, are what we will use to record our thinking, and we will talk about that more later on in the presentation. Let's begin with making inferences. Notice our symbol, the circle around the eye, for inferences. Making an inference is like reading between the lines. Inferring is drawing conclusions based on what the author is trying to tell you, but hasn't directly said. If you take a look at this selection from a book, it reads, "It was so dark I could barely see my hand in front of my face. As I stepped further into the room, I could feel the goosebumps making their way up my skin. All I could hear was the sound of my own breathing, which was suddenly coming in gasps." And in red, you see my inference. The author hasn't directly told me, but he used descriptive language to say that they are getting scared. That is what I inferred. Authors often do this. They use descriptive language to demonstrate or to get us to infer. The second strategy is making connections. Making a connection is taking something you already know and connecting it to something you have read. There are 3 types of connections. One, the first connection is text to self. This is taking something that you have read or that you are reading and connecting it to something that has actually happened to you in real life, something that you know about. And the second strategy is text to text. That is taking something you have previously read and applying it to what you are now reading. And the third way is text to world. This is taking something you have already learned and texting it to and connecting it to the book. This could include something you've learned on television, on the internet, or even just in conversation, and applying it to what you have read. The next is questioning. Notice our symbol, the question mark. Questioning is when you ask yourself about what you are reading. Asking questions is meant to be as a self-checkup to make sure you are understanding. If you notice our graphic here, book plus you equals asking questions. This is important, and there's many different ways you can ask questions, including in groups or on your own in your independent reading. And there are 2 specific types of questions that we are going to discuss. Lightweight versus heavyweight questions. If you look on the left, you see the lightweight questions. A lightweight question is something that you can find directly in the text. The author gives you the answer. It's not something you really have to think about. You could look back and find it in the reading. So an example would be, what color was Bob's shirt in the story? That would be something the author directly gave us, such as Bob's shirt was red in a description. Or what type of car did Ezra drive? We don't have to think very hard about that. We could find it in the reading again. A heavyweight question is more something you have to think about. It's not something the author would directly come out and say. It would be more thinking about a theme or maybe how the characters feel. Examples would be, why would Casey have decided not to run away from home? The author may not tell us exactly why Casey decided not to want to run away from home. That's a conclusion we have to make on our own. Or a second example, what was the lesson that the main character learned? Again, the author may not come right out and tell us. So those are 2 types of questions. The next reading comprehension strategy is making predictions. Notice our P for making predictions. Making a prediction is like guessing what is going to happen next while you are reading a book. We've all made predictions about life or things in general. Notice our graphic here. He says, I bet they are going to run into the evil villain on their way as he's reading. That's his prediction. Make sure that when you make predictions that they are meaningful. And by that I mean that you take what you know already about the book and what you have read and apply that to your prediction. You don't guess that wild monkeys are going to attack when your book has had nothing to do with monkeys so far. So make sure they are meaningful. Our last strategy we're going to cover today is visualizing. Visualizing is kind of self-explanatory. Visualizing is making a mental movie in your head as you read. You can visualize different things. You can visualize the characters, you could visualize the setting, or you could visualize the action that is taking place as you read. Some strategies for visualizing would even include possibly stopping and drawing a picture from the description that the author has given you. These are some tips to applying comprehension strategies to your independent reading. The different tools listed here, one is pencil or markers. To use pencil or markers, you really have to make sure that it's your own book and that you don't mind. If you don't mind and the book belongs to you, you could use a pencil or a marker in the margins of the book to write down the strategy you used and then what it was. For example, if you had a question, using your symbol as noted below with your question mark in a circle and then writing down what the question was. If the book does not belong to you, say it's a library book or your teacher's book, you could use sticky notes for the same effect. Just stick it right where you use the strategy. For example, if you're making an inference, stick it right where you made the inference and write down what your inference was. Or last, you could use a journal and write down all your comprehension strategies you applied that day in reading in your journal. These are all great tools to use to check for understanding. Also, don't forget your symbols. Again, those are just to note what strategy you used. So if I were to make a prediction, I would put the P with a circle around it, and then I would, on my sticky note or either in my margins or in my journal, and then I would write what my prediction was so I could come back later and see if I was correct in my predicting. Thank you and good luck in applying. Remember that reading is thinking.